Hello, this is TheBenCrazy, and in this video, I'll be going over the best graphics settings for iRacing in both VR and non-VR, along with tips and tricks on increasing your frame rates. Everything I go over is timestamped in the description below, along with links to the sources I use to get to these settings. Before I start off, my computer specs are currently a Ryzen 7 3800X with a GTX 1080 along with 32 gigs of RAM. I also tested this with a GTX 1660 Ti with 16 gigs of RAM. The VR headset I use is original Oculus Rift. First, we want to go into the graphics control panel. This can be done by either right-clicking on your desktop and selecting it, or right-clicking the Nvidia symbol on your taskbar and selecting it from there. If you have an AMD graphics card, you should have a similar control panel, but do note that some of these settings will be different for you or will not exist. Click on Image Settings with Preview and make sure that Use the Advanced 3D Image Settings is selected and click on Apply. Then go to Manage 3D Settings and click on the Program Settings tab. We do not want to make these changes in the Global Settings tab, as this would change the settings for all of your applications. Click on the drop-down and select iRacing or iRacing Sim 64 DX11.exe. If iRacing is not showing up in the drop-down, click on Add, Browse, go to the location where you installed iRacing, which for me is in my Programs Files x86, select iRacing, then click on iRacing Sim 64 DX11 and open. Now for the settings. Image sharpening we want off. Anisotropic filtering will be handled by the sim, so we want to set this to application controlled. FXAA we want off as it makes the game a bit blurry. Gamma correction off. Anti-aliasing mode will also be controlled by the sim, so we want to set this to application controlled. Now, anti-aliasing transparency is a frame killer. I recommend setting this to 4x if you have an RTX 2080 or a 2070 Ti, but for any lower graphics cards, I recommend setting this to either 2x or multi-sampled. For CUDA, select all. Low latency mode we want off as it can cause some frame issues. Max frame rate we want off. MFAA we want off as well. OpenGL should be set to auto select. Power management mode should be set to max performance. Refresh rate should be set to global if you have this option. Shader cache set to on. Anisotropic sampling optimization set to off. Negative LOD bias set to allow. Texture filter quality can save you some frames if you set it to performance, but I prefer setting this to high quality. Trilinear optimization set to off. Threaded optimization on. Triple buffering off. VSync off. And lastly, for VR, set pre-rendered frames to 3 as it helps rendering and smoothing of the image. Click on Apply and exit out of the control panel. Next, open up iRacing in a test session. Then once you have it open, click on Options and then Graphics. For resolution, non-VR users should set this to your monitor's resolution and refresh rate. For VR, set this to either the monitor's resolution or make it lower as it has no impact on the resolution in the headset. UI zoom in VR depends on your personal preference. I like it at 50%. Non-VR users should check full screen, but this option does not matter for VR. SPS should be checked for VR if your GPU supports it, as it has a decent performance increase. You will know if your card doesn't support it if you get blur or double focus. Field of view does not have any effect in VR, but for non-VR users, in the description below I have included a link for an FOV calculator for you to get the correct FOV, as it is very important. For the performance slider, set it to max quality. Do note that all these settings on the left column can be set higher if you have the frames, otherwise try to follow my settings. Set sky/clouds to low. It will look kind of stuttery, but it will help with saving some frames. Car set to high detail, otherwise you will have issues with cars popping in and out at far distances. Pit objects set to off to save frames. Otherwise, we can set this to low. Events settings to low. Grandstands set to low. Crowd set to off unless you care to have people in the stands, in which case set it to low. Objects set to low details and particles set to low with checking full resolution. Max cars I have set to 43 because I mostly do oval racing, but you can set this to a max of 64 if you run multi-class. Set the next settings to draw all cars and draw all pits. Dynamic LOD we'll mess with later, but set the FPS to either the refresh rate of your headset if you use VR, or your monitor if you're not using VR. Lastly, in the left column, set max pre-rendered frames to 1. In the middle column, set anisotropic filtering to 16x, AA samples to 4x, check rendered dynamic track data and rendered dynamic tire data, select shadow maps on tracks/cars, uncheck dynamic objects, night shadow maps uncheck as it really kills the frames on night tracks, check walls and headlights, set number of lights to 3, select no filter, change dynamic cube maps and fixed cube maps to 0, lastly set shader quality to high detail. Now to the right column. The first option is driver preference. I have it set to show driver's arms. Uncheck 2 pass trees. I use the virtual mirror, so I have the cockpit mirrors unchecked. This will also save some frames. Uncheck high detail and mirrors. Headlights set to low. Headlights on track and mirrors unchecked. And virtual mirror checked, but again, that's personal preference with the FOV set to 90. Motion blur is set to off, and for the bottom right, check sharpening if you have VR, otherwise have it unchecked. Check 2048 car textures and check hide car numbers to see stamped numbers for those that use trading paints. Don't worry about the bottom sliders yet, as we will get to them later. For the replay settings, try to set the settings similar to the graphics settings and click on Done. Exit the game, and lastly, let's mess with some INI files. Go to your Documents folder and open up iRacing. Right-click core.ini and open it with Notepad. Under Tasks, you will see num processors to use for new damage. What this means is that you can change how many processors, or for iRacing what they actually mean is how many threads, will handle the new damage model, with the max number being 8. What I recommend is changing this number to half of the threads that you have for your CPU. This can be done by Googling your CPU and finding the number. For me, I have a Ryzen 7 3800X that has 16 threads, so my number will be 8. This will help prevent cars from blinking out when you have multiple cars taking damage. Click on File, Save, and Close. Next, right-click Renderer dx11.ini and open it with Notepad. Do note that iRacing sometimes mixes up the location of these options, and it might not be in the same order for everyone. An easy way to follow along is using the shortcut Ctrl F and typing in what you're looking for. Also, don't be afraid to pause the video to follow along. I will also be going over the important settings in the INI file, so if you have a question on what I use for something I didn't go over, in the description below I included a download link for my INI file. The first option we will be looking for is the LOD %. This option was recently added into iRacing and allows us an easier way to hit our targeted frame rates. What it does is lowers the detail of objects that are farther away, as well as increases the details of objects that are closer. For LOD % Dyno Mirrors Max, set this to 500, and for the rest of the maxes, set them to 400. If your computer can handle it, you can lower these farther to 100 or even 25, but it will severely impact the sim's performance. For the minimums, set them all to 25. If you see that iRacing is still having trouble hitting the frame rates, you can raise the minimum to 100 or higher. For the LOD min FPS target, set this to 1 frame above your headset's refresh rate or your monitor's refresh rate. For me, using my Oculus Rift, I have it set to 91. Then, under Replay Graphics, set these options to match what we did in the graphics options. Next, find Max Working Set MB_64-bit and Vid Mem MB and set these both to 8192, as is currently the highest you can set these settings to. Next, for the Oculus Rift, if you have one, go to the Oculus Rift column and set Rift Enabled to 1. Pixels per displayed pixel can really tax your system. If your computer can, increase this to 120 to improve graphics, but for me, I keep it at 100 to save performance, and to be honest, I really couldn't tell a difference in my headset. Set 2-stage AA to 1, and if you are tired of getting prompted to use your headset, select Auto Select to 1 for the sim to automatically start for your Oculus Rift if it detects it. For other headsets, under OpenVR, set Enabled to 1, 2-stage AA to 1, Alignment Fix to 1, Prediction Mode to 1, and Auto Select to 1 if you're tired of getting prompted to use the headset. Click File, Save, and Close, and you are all set to go. One other thing I would like to go over is a piece of software I found that will help those that either switch back and forth from VR in their monitor, or those that set everything to max if they paint cars and need a good render. In the link below is a link to iRacing Config. This allows you to easily switch back and forth from one set of INI files to another, as opposed to renaming and moving the INI files back and forth. So I thank you so much for watching, and I hope these settings helped you in making the sim perform and look better. If you have any questions on the settings I went over in the video, put it in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe to see more videos in the future. And again, I'm TheBenCrazy, and I will see you later. BenCrazy out.